Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if you have your natal Mars in conjunction with Saturn. This is like having Mars in Capricorn, which I happen to have in my own chart. And by the way, if you hear any rattling noise like a rattle, that's the cicadas. So I can imagine in the future, beyond 2024, this will be something in the distant past, but yeah, I have the windows closed, but you could still hear it. So, what is this all about? Well, let's talk about what Mars represents and what Saturn represents. Mars is the planet of action. It's also the way that you kind of express anger in particular, if you do at all. And I actually think that that's a very important thing because some people really self-sabotage because they have anger management issues. But in those cases, you would really look to the aspects to the moon, for instance, for more information because the moon is all about the emotions. And then, if there's a hard angle to Mars, that's more going to be more problematic. Mars in and of itself can be how we do things, what kind of energy do we put behind something? Because Mars is our drive. And I read so much. I remember reading somewhere, someone saying something like, Mars kind of leads the way or something along those lines. And it makes a lot of sense because if you look at the symbol of Mars, it looks like this arrow. And so going towards your destination. But of course, this can involve anything. This doesn't just have to be some career goal, for instance. This could be, how you decide to walk down the street. Are you somebody who takes your sweet time, or do you tend to move very deliberately, very rapidly? Even a very small goal like going someplace, it could determine that. But also your energy levels. And Saturn is the planet, it's the lord of karma, okay? So it does pack quite a punch when it comes to our sense of discipline, for instance. And Saturn is the father. And we can look at that literally, but we can also look at that symbolically because the father represents authority figures. And that's what Saturn represents as well. Saturn rules the 10th house of career. So it really does deal with our ambitions, and it's all about being disciplined, organized. So the word that just popped out when I was saying disciplined and organized was methodical. And I would say that somebody with this combination is very methodical. What does that mean? It means that they do things step by step. Sometimes, like for instance, you have to look at the signs that are involved in this because if you have Mars in Aries, and Saturn in Aries, that's going to show up a little bit differently. And of course, you have to look at house placement too. But especially with a sign like Aries, that's very impulsive. Aries is ruled by Mars. So there could be extra impulsivity that makes it hard to be methodical, but actually it could be quite good for somebody who has Mars in Aries to have that conjunction with Saturn because it might make them slow down a little bit and think before they act. So before I continue, I want to give a shout out to cafeastrology.com because I always try to consult at least one website when I'm doing these readings, just to get a feel for what they say about it, so that I can riff off of that. Um, I, I don't want to leave anything out. And by the way, it doesn't mean that I won't leave anything out, because if you look at different websites for anything, but particularly with astrology, you will find that there are different interpretations, and nobody can mention everything, obviously. So, like I said, this is like having Mars in Capricorn. And as somebody who has this, I can kind of like get into that vibe, even though I do not feel that I am completely like this in terms of how I actually act. I want to be, and I have the potential to be. There are so many things in astrology that can modify some of these placements that you have. It's very important to note that, because sometimes people will write to me and say, "Oh, I'm nothing like that," or that's not me. But they don't realize that you can't isolate one um, aspect or one uh, house placement or what have you. You just can't do that, because it's all about how it comes together as a whole. But what it can do is it can give you some ideas of your allies, the things that you have that can help you out, and and some of the pitfalls of some of your influences. But even the pitfalls, it doesn't mean that you're doomed. It just means that you have to be aware of, if you want to call them weaknesses, I don't really like that word, but it works. The things that your vulnerabilities, it's good, because then you know what to put attention on. So, with this combination, you're looking at someone who lives in the real world, okay? And why is that important, or what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, I notice a lot of people, especially since we have gravitated towards a world that is very much oriented towards the online space or universe. And, people, especially since people more and more often, and I think this is part of a spiritual awakening, they feel that they want to do something that is their project, their passion, like their passion project. And in a lot of these cases, they're looking also maybe to make money from it or what have you. And, but it does, I guess it doesn't have to be that, but whatever it is that the person's goal is. I notice that when they're talking about it, there is a lot of, um, to me, what is distorted thinking, and a little bit too like geared towards the best case scenario. And Saturn as a planet is about um, being conservative. And when people think of the word conservative, they think of politics. But it's really, conserve means to save. So it's putting something in reserve, which means that you're saving for a rainy day. You're like acknowledging that things don't necessarily turn out the way that you expect them to, or that they may not, happen as quickly as you would like them to. And that's what being realistic is. People who want to start some kind of business, or I see it a lot with YouTube or whatever. They're like disappointed that they can't get 1 million subscribers right away, or that they can't get a client right away. If they start a business, they can't get a customer right away, and they throw in the towel. Now this combination might throw in the towel in the 11th hour, when they would have been right about to see their first success. So if you have this combination, and I don't really, to be honest with you, I don't know quite why that is. Um, because I did not come up with that. That's what they said here, is that um, that people like you could be, out of sync when it comes to time. Now, Saturn is Father Time. So it might be because of Mars' impetuous quality that there is this kind of disjointed effort where the person is doing something very rashly or very quickly, and then it doesn't line up with the patient aspect, because they are quite different energies, Mars and Saturn. And so maybe there's this, like Mars rules two signs in astrology. It rules Aries and it rules Scorpio, but we primarily think of, or at least I primarily think of Aries when I think of Mars, because, with Scorpio, I think of Pluto, but, I'm just acknowledging that it does rule both of those signs. But when I think of Aries, it really is a very impatient sign. And Saturn is about the long haul. So Saturn, people that are very influenced by Saturn, maybe they have Capricorn rising, so Saturn is their ruler, or they have Saturn in the first house, and maybe even forms a conjunction with the ascendant. Those types of people, or Sun in Capricorn, whatever, they can be very patient because they're not looking to do something right off the bat. They believe in hard work and putting effort into something and then seeing the results. I think of the Seven of Pentacles in the Tarot, where it's about investing energy into something and waiting to see, if it works out. So, it's important for you when you do take action that you are not you don't become discouraged if something doesn't come about when you think, because you never know. There could be success right around the corner. So, there's no doubt that you are determined. I would say Mars itself is a sign of determination, especially like a sign, like if you have Mars in Taurus. Taurus is a fixed sign. I call it the steamroller effect, but any of the fixed signs in that Mars may inhabit, like if you have it in Scorpio, or you have it in Leo or Aquarius, you may stick to your guns. You may stay the course. So you are very persistent, and that is what being determined is. And so when you act, it is much more likely that you're going to, have a game plan than just kind of be off, do things off the cuff. And you might even say, when you're listening to this, you mean there are actually people on this planet that just do things? Yeah, there are, but you can't dismiss that, because some people, they do very well for themselves by employing that approach. Everybody has to do what's right for themselves. And who knows, maybe there are some of you, especially if you have either your Mars or your Saturn, or maybe both, if they are adversely aspected, maybe you have a tendency to kind of like plan, excessively, and not take that action for whatever reason. You delay taking action. So in those cases, that's when it goes to the other extreme. But for other people, they may just like feel like, there's an expression, taking messy action. And it means that you're not being a perfectionist. Oh, don't get me started. If your Mars is in Virgo with a conjunction That would be very interesting. I don't know. Yeah, well, I was going to say, when was the last time Saturn was in Virgo? I'd have to see the generations and stuff like that. But Saturn it only stays in one sign for 3.5 years. So it is every 30 years or so that Saturn goes back into the same sign. So, in any case, there are signs like Virgo that are perfectionistic. Well, I think Virgo takes the cake when it comes to that. And on the plus side, somebody who has Mars and Virgo might be very good with details, and they want to do things right. So it's not to say that it's all bad, but the thing is that make sure that you're not going in that opposite direction where you are trying to get all your ducks in a row, and then the ducks, you know, are floating out into the river, never to be seen from again. So this combination, I think there can be a tendency to be very dutiful, like you think that you have to do certain things. It's funny, I said dutiful, and it sounds like that's a part of the word do, because there is a sense with Saturn of duty, and with Mars, that could be the way that you operate in life. But the problem is that other people can sense that, and maybe you take on things that don't belong to you, that other people should be doing for themselves. And then you feel like the martyr. And by the way, if you have Mars in Pisces, this can be the story of your life, where you feel like you are the martyr, like you always have to sacrifice for somebody else. And there could be a very strong sense of duty also with that conjunction of Mars and Saturn and Pisces. And part of that, I think, also can be that the person feels with Saturn and Pisces, maybe fatalistic, in a sense that everything is predetermined, and if they're not experiencing success, it just isn't in the cards for them in this lifetime, and yada yada. And you have to resist kind of operating that way. Mars can be the way you operate, but there's so much more to that, because you do, obviously we don't control everything that happens. There are other people, we do have free will, but other people have free will too. So we're all participating in this cosmic play. So we don't control everything, but we control what we do. And so you have to look at the things that you're doing and seeing if maybe you're being your own worst enemy sometimes. And not letting people take advantage of you in the sense that you're going to do for them what they need to do for themselves. And then you feel resentful towards them because you feel like you're having to do everything, when actually, you chose that. Nobody forced you to. You chose to do that. This combination is hardworking. So you may have like a great work ethic, and you really believe that anything worth doing is something that you're going to have to put in a lot of elbow grease. Mars in Virgo, going back to Virgo, is a very productive type of person. And with that conjunction can be super duper productive and pragmatic in the things that you do. You're not spinning your wheels. But if you have like Mars in Sagittarius, you may be somebody who loves your freedom. And it may feel like with somebody with Saturn and Sagittarius and this combination, that it's more of a spiritual thing than anything else. It's not necessarily like spiritual disciplines. So it might like show up differently depending on what sign the conjunction is in, what's going on. And I realize that there are some people where the conjunction may occur with two different signs. If that happens, take into account the two signs that are involved and what each represents for the planet that that it's in, and you will get you can still synthesize, I don't know how to say that, synthesize this regardless of whether or not it's in conjunction in one sign, and you can get a feel for how it will affect you. And, some of you are not only productive, but you may tend to be workaholics, according to Cafe Astrology. And there are certain signs in general that we talk about, and I'm talking about sun signs specifically, like Capricorn, like maybe Virgo, maybe Leo, that tend to be very hardworking. Some, if your Mars is in Taurus, you may be the kind of person who can really, that you have a lot of endurance when it comes to work. So that is actually part of, I don't know about workaholism in general, but having a good work ethic, it goes hand in hand with having energy. Some people, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. So it's not that they don't want to, it's just that, whatever is going on with them, they can't. But there are some people that have boundless energy. This can be good for people who are in positions of authority where you get to organize whatever's going on, and this is, if you have the type of work where it is very repetitive, you could call it monotonous, you would excel in this because I don't know why they say it, but I would say because this combination, since it is connected with being organized, there is that element of repetition that is in alignment with that. If somebody is an organized person, they will tend to do the same things. They're very or disciplined. They're going to have an organized schedule, and that to somebody who really craves novelty, that might seem very repetitive. That they always get up at a certain hour, they always do this and they always do that. But to that person, that's how they stay on task. That's how they meet their goals, because they are organizing their lives. One thing that is so great about this combination, I feel, is that you are not, because you are realistic, you're not going to just throw in the towel typically. If you face any kind of setback, because you know that it's not always going to be smooth sailing. Now, it may be that if over time, a certain period of time, you don't see those results, you may be tempted to throw in the towel right before success comes to you. But that could be more of when Saturn is too much Saturn can be kind of cynical and kind of like pessimistic, in the sense that Saturn doesn't see life the way Jupiter does. Saturn kind of like, the people that are influenced by Saturn, you might bring an umbrella on a sunny day because you just figure, well, rain is always possible in the forecast. Maybe they screwed up that day and they don't know what they're doing, or maybe it'll just come out of the blue. So expecting the worst is something that you may be quite talented in. However, if you look at it that way, I mean, there's the pragmatism where the person can see that, life isn't always hunky-dory. That's actually a good thing. But then on the flip side, that could lead to somebody who is overly pessimistic, and they don't see that things can possibly work out unless it's, some kind of thing that's coming from their own, what I would call narrow perspective, if other factors kind of support that. Because again, it depends on your other influences. But if you have, let's say with this combination, you also have the sun in Capricorn, well, you might tend to be rather limited in your scope of, potential for things to manifest. You might be like, oh, well, I didn't work hard enough at this, so this isn't going to pan out for me. And you might underestimate yourself. So you don't want to do that, because then you might not go for all you could go for. And even if you see success, it might be limited. There was a mention of being sarcastic with this combination. Not sure why they would say something like that. I do think that Capricorn as a sign, people can be really funny with dry humor who are Capricorns or who have that prominent Capricorn, because they kind of pick up on the dark side of life, and they can poke fun at it. But also that dryness that Capricorn is associated with, that maybe we could also apply to its ruler Saturn. But I think, and it's really not dark side, but just kind of, that dour pessimism. But I would say, rather than sarcasm, I would say that because Mars represents anger and how we express it. Yeah, maybe because Saturn is rather inhibited or restricted, then it's hard for such a person to be like open when they're angry at someone. And so maybe it's more, you could say it's sarcasm, but not so much to be funny, but more in terms of being, of trying to kind of be passive aggressive and express anger indirectly. I would say it like that. But in any case, another thing that is very common with Capricorn and, a prominent Saturn, and I guess this combination, is relying on yourself versus maybe asking for help or depending on anyone, because there's a strong self-reliant nature with Saturn. And if you have Saturn in your first house, you know the drill, you know that this is true, that you may have had to, from a very young age, had to be resourceful and had to do things for yourself. that you learned that you couldn't rely on others. And there might be other placements like Neptune in the first or the fourth house that can indicate this as well. And, I don't think that there's anything wrong with being self-reliant. I think that it's actually a very good thing, as long as the person is not being excessive. And when they really need help and they know that they can't do it alone, that they have the ability, and you can also say too, it's really about feeling worthy of being helped. Because if, it can be more than just, oh, I don't want to bother somebody, or I don't want somebody to think that I can't handle my own business. It's not like that. But the great thing is that you are patient. And so even if, life seems sometimes like you're being thwarted, because that might happen to some of you, is that are blocked sometimes because Saturn can be those obstacles and Mars is trying to charge ahead. So even though this is a conjunction, it's not necessarily a negative, influence. It can still present itself as somebody who's trying to do certain things and not feeling like there's that receptivity from the universe of allowing it to happen. So you have to, just kind of like shrug your shoulders and accept that this is just the way that it works for you, and to be persistent with your goals, and not to, as long as they're realistic, and chances are they will be with somebody who has this combination, because I obviously there are counter influences that might change that a little bit, but in general, you will not dream too big. You will not bite off more than you can chew. Okay, that's what I have for you. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.